You been to Huntsville State Park?
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, one day I took Boy Scouts down there on Interstate 45, and a man had his son on the nature trail, and he put his arm around his son and said, "Look, son, this is what the forest is supposed to look like." We're living on things that were discovered in the past. Marion, being a graduate of Texas A&M University, he said, now I've lived in the area for about 30 years. I've learned how to identify a lot of plants in the area. He said, Farmer Brown described it to me over the phone, maybe it's, and Farmer Brown went, "Great, Doc, that's good." He said, it was green. It was a foot tall, and it had yellow flowers. The veterinarian laughed and said, "Farmer Brown, you just described over 500 species of plants in our local area." See, if you look at anything out in your yard, in your alley, the garden, and you can't name it, you can't see it, you just perceive that it's not your tomato plant and your cabbage. So when the man in your county planted corn, and the native little blue stem and big blue stem that had been there for thousands of years came up in his cornfield, he called it a weed. So what is the definition of a weed? Here's the definition in ecology that we use. A weed is a plant whose virtue has yet to be discovered. I want you to go back in time with me to 1944. In World War II, General MacArthur was called on by the Allied forces to go into the Philippine Islands and whip the Japanese and drive them off the island. We know through history and through stories passed down through families that General MacArthur was successful, and they drove all the Japanese off. We also know that the Filipino people were so happy that they were going to have liberty, democracy, and freedom. They walked around on the island doing this sign right here. And in 1944, man, what did that sign mean?
Victory.
V for victory. Well, some people are old enough to remember. Some have learned the stories that have been handed down. But I have found in my lifetime that how we name things and how we interpret what we see, it changes. Because knowledge is escalating. Okay? And we learn a lot from experience. Well, in 1957, when I got in the Cub Scout program of the Boy Scouts of America at San Angelo, I went to my first Cub Scout pack meeting. The Cub Master was up on the school stage, and we were all milling around the tables. He held up identically that same sign. Didn't mean V for victory. It was a Cub Scout sign. It meant do your best. And when he held it up at the pack meeting, it meant for everybody to sit down, be quiet, and for me to shut up. The sign had changed. Well, and that was only 13 years after the other sign. In 1965, I got my driver's license, and I was running up and down the roads of San Angelo, Texas at 105 miles an hour. And all the people in oncoming lane were doing that same sign at me through the windshield. Have you ever seen it?
I mean, there's two highway patrols.
It meant, young man, when you go over the hill, if you haven't slowed down, the highway patrolman's going to give you a ticket. You see, I learned that through experience. Okay? And so the sign changed. Well, 1968 in San Angelo, a new group of people had moved into our, they had hair down to their shoulders. They still live in Austin, down on Padre Island, over in Florida and out in California. And they walked around doing absolutely the same sign. What it meant? Peace, brother. How you doing today? A greeting amongst people. They knew exactly what it meant. But did you know that 45 years later, the people in San Angelo still don't know what it means, and they don't care? Here at the Land-Grant University, I learned the true meaning of this sign. And I want you to know, as Master Gardener volunteers, what this really means. And at A&M, I learned that this meant 2, 1, 2. See, we suspect all the Aggies have learned how to count to 2. Some are suspicious on knowing how to count to 3. See, but with knowledge comes responsibility. What will you do with the knowledge you get out of the Master Gardener program other than make your own garden and yard do better? Will you share that knowledge with 5-year-olds? Will you talk about plants and stewardship of the land at your Sunday school class? Will you share the knowledge on a nature trail? Will you help build a Master Gardener garden at the local school so that other people learn how to grow food? See, so what will be your responsibility? It will be just like the FFA kids and the 4-H kids. for you to tell it to somebody else. In 71, the Texas legislature threw up their hands and named all 6 species of bluebonnets in Texas as the state wildflowers. See, even your children's textbooks have been lying since 1971. The Texas bluebonnet is only one of 6 state wildflowers. The Chiefs and Big Bend bluebonnet are perennial that gets this tall. It's one of the state flowers too. So, look at that plant. If I look at it and I can't name it, I can't see it. It's just yellow, purple, green, black, orange, or red. And if I can't name it, I can't look it up in a book and find out everything man discovered about it and it's written down. So, ma'am, what are you holding? Put it on the end of your tongue and chew it up and tell me what flavor it is. Is it sweet? Is it sour?
Bitter.
Yeah, she said it's bitter sour. Why? Because she just ate oxalic acid. Oxalis. This is the native little yellow one called yellow wood sorrel. We found a native plant. The flower is pink or orange and smaller than the eraser on a pencil. You're not going to be planting it in your garden and go, oh, how pretty, because you're going to not even be able to see the flower. It's so small. And she found a native annual that came up in the fall and sitting here as a rosette, but it's going to go to stem elongation and have white petals, white ray flowers, and yellow center. And sometimes the yellow and on the white will look pink. She found slim aster, a native annual weed, because man knew, the scientists knew, that humans make the same mistakes in every generation. So to keep the soil covered, to improve the water cycle, the production of clean air, this grass was brought to Texas. The 2 birds went out there and lit on the fence, but while they were sitting there, they pooped the seed of every woody plant they ate the day before right on the fence line. Thus, every woody plant in Walker County comes up on the fence. The landowner said, Dr. Rector, I don't like that. What am I going to do? Well, sir, being a scientist, I said, sir, I guess we're going to have to kill all your birds. Would that be socially and environmentally acceptable? No. And so, but what causes the problem? Is it the woody plants that create the problem? Or was it the man that built the fence created his own next expense? See, this ground you're on is a sandy clay lawn. Underneath it is solid clay. And you're going to see the solid clay down there. Well, water goes through clay 1 inch per month. And so this post oak savanna had 4 to 18 inches of sand on top of what was called the clay pan. The water went through the sand very quickly, hit the clay pan, and it moved laterally so that it came out as springs in the river, the creeks, and kept them running. Your land is not the same as it was in 1823. We know that we've lost from 4 to 24 inches over the entire state. Nobody's gardening, ranching, farming, or living on the pristine soil that was here originally. And so, look, there's Yopon out there, but a lot of it is that unwanted plant from a foreign country. Doesn't feed any native wildlife. Where the Yopon, the deer will eat the leaves because it's an evergreen in the winter for emergency food. The turkey will use the leaves as green chop, and then about 14 species of native birds eat the berries of the Yopon. They're the cardinal, they're the cedar waxwing, they're your favorite birds. They're spreading your Yopon. Because at this height, I'm only getting 70% of a raindrop's impact on the ground. But watch what happens when it starts to rain. Look on the splashboard, and what's jumping up on the splashboard?
The soil.
Soil, not dirt. Dirt's what you get under your fingernails in the garden. This is soil. Okay, now look at some of it has jumped all the way up into here. When the raindrop comes down at 32 feet per second squared, that's a lot of kinetic energy. It hits the ground, it goes boom, and it throws soil up in the air. When it lands in running water, we call that erosion.
No
do you see any soil jumping up on the splashboard? Do you see the soil, the rain, hitting bare ground and causing erosion to it?
No.
Well, in the TEKS requirements of the public school system for 5th graders, Water cycle and erosion are the top two topics. Did we just learn something? Did we demonstrate it to ourselves that maintaining grass cover and even dead litter cover maximizes my ability to get the water in the ground and not have it run off? I'm going to tell you, work to get the water in the soil. In Texas, the limiting element is water. As 1,000 new people a week move into the state. In a way, the pollinators of the bluebonnet see in UV light. White in UV light is fluorescent blue. Red and purple in UV light are black. So when it says that the bees are out running around looking for food, they see the white spot, they know the plant has nectar and pollen. But when the eggs in the ovary are fertilized, and I don't need a pollinator now, the white spot turns red because the nectar sours and the pollen runs out, and it tells the insect flapping its wings at 300 to 500 times a minute, HEB is closed. Don't come in. There is no reward. There's a tree right there. Look at all the seed pods on it. It flowered in January. It's got its seed set in the middle of winter in February. Who is that tree that's not flowering in the spring? It flowered in January. It set its seed, and they're going to blow off, and they're going to come up in your garden, up next to the foundation of your house, in the sidewalk. Is it a weed? Or what kind of tree is that?
No problem.
It's an elm.
No.
It's called winged elm. And it's common in your county.